Welcome to week 17 of the Gambling Show. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up, dude?
How many teams left do you have in the championship
I
for
have three
fantasy?
teams in the championship, three teams playing for a third place prize. What about you? You're down
Huh.
to your final survivor, right?
Down to my last one, and Jalen Hurts was just ruled out today. So rolling out Justin Herbert in the Saturday morning game tomorrow. Um,
I
we're
think
gonna
you'll be
be,
all right.
yeah, we're gonna quick edit and turnaround on this one to get that out, get the Gambling Show out early for you guys so you can watch it before the games. But without further ado, let's get into the week 16 recap. I'll start first. It was a 2-2-1 week for me. Very interesting. We got our first push of the year. We have about doing the quick mental math now. We have about over 160 games played between the two of us this year. We just got our first push. I think last year we had like 5 within the first 3 weeks. It was really, really weird. It was an outlier. This is more regular. But let's get into it here. Steelers Ravens under 44 and a half. Me and Yanni both had this one. That was an L for us early in the week. It just I don't know. Like Lamar played well. Lamar threw 3 touchdowns. That was something he had not done against the Steelers in quite some time. And Russ threw a pick six. It's not, we're not going to right side you, right? A lot of times those totals, even if you think you have a good beat on it, they'll just get away from you. It happens. That's why I prefer to play like against the spread to totals, but we both ate shit on that one. It's fine. Next one for me was Eagles minus 3.5. This was against the Redskins, and I don't do this very often, boys, but I'm going to right side you. The Eagles was the right side of that bet the entire time. Jalen Hurts goes out near the end of the first quarter with a concussion, and Kenny Pickett came in relief of Jalen Hurts. From that point on, the Eagles scored 9 total points. Plays like the tush push were completely off the table. Saquon Barkley had rushed for 100 yards in the first 8 minutes of the game. After Jalen Hurts went out, he had 16 more rushes for 27 yards. It was a total disaster. I think the Eagles were up 20-7 when he left. They still scored like a little bit, right? The 3 field goals, but Jaden Daniels, man, he tore up the best scoring defense, and in my mind, probably the best defense in the league. Got to tip your cap to the kid. You got to tip your cap to Jaden Daniels. But when your offense cannot score points, you're the Philadelphia Eagles. You cannot sustain drives like you're used to, and you become one-dimensional. In this case, the Redskins viewed the Eagles as only a Saquon team and just stacked the box. He had nowhere to run. Sometimes you'll lose those, and even with the just horrible way that game felt, like the Eagles were still up 4 with 10 seconds left to go. The Redskins, I think they had it on the Eagles' 10-yard line. Jaden Daniels throws the ball to the back of the end zone. I think it was like Olamide Zacchaeus or something. Like I forgot who it was even who caught that pass, but took a bad L on there. I feel like it was the right bet if Jalen doesn't get concussed, but it's whatever. That just happens in gambling sometimes, right? Next one was Colts minus 3.5 against the Titans. This was pretty free. Anthony Richardson only dropped back 11 times in the game. He completed 7 passes on the day. He didn't really have to do anything because Jonathan Taylor just went out and made the Tennessee Titans his bitch. 200 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns. I think there was one rush of 60 yards. There was another one of like 40 plus yards. Glad to see Jonathan Taylor showed up as soon as my roster with him was eliminated from the playoffs, but Colts won that pretty easily. There were some garbage time touchdowns by Tennessee near the end, but didn't really matter. 3.5 was entirely too short. Next one was the Rams minus 3. This was the one against the Jets in New York. This one felt really, really weird to me. I had said I was not concerned about Matthew Stafford in the cold. Matthew Stafford was not very good in the cold. This was actually a very close game. I think they went into half tied 6-6 or something like that. Um, there were a couple terrible decisions on the Jets' part, being in field goal position, going forward on fourth down when points are at a premium, right? I don't really know what Jeff Ulbrich was doing there. Probably just kick the field goal, keep playing good defense. They chose not to do that. The Rams were able to pull away. It was entirely closer than I thought it would be, but since 3 was a good number, a win's a win. Then the last one was the Vikings. This was the push. I believe they won 27-24. We had Yanni come out very strongly in the Week 16 picks and tell me he thought I stepped in shit here. There were points during that game where I was like, oh no, like maybe this was not as good of a play as I thought. Um, the Vikings got out to the early lead, but then they like just were not able to move the ball on the Seahawks defense, who's really been improving. I still don't think they're like the best defense in the league or anything, but it's a good defense. They had periods where they shut Sam Darnold down. I believe near the end of the game we had I think the Vikings were down. They were down 4, and Sam Darnold hit Justin Jefferson on like a 40-yard bomb. He beat, I think it was Tariq Woolen over the top. Vikings go up by 3, held off the Geno Smith comeback, and it was a push. The good news about a push in a parlay is that it does not kill your parlay; it just nulls the leg out of the parlay. So because I had the Rams and Vikings parlayed, you effectively take that Vikings piece out, and the Rams ended up being like a single game bet at this minus 105, which was 195.24. So all things considered, I think I lost like $10 on the week or something. We really just didn't move very much. 500 exactly on the week. Still a little over 7 units in the green. Season record, it kind of took a hit because I've been better than 500 this year, but I'm still at like 56.9% or something. Got 2 weeks left. Looking to make one final push.
Yeah, so Ted covered the Ravens Steelers. I actually hit my first parlay of the year, and the reason that I put them together was because I felt so good about both of those games, and they ended up winning by 17 and 18 points, I think, respectively. For the two teams, it felt like a little too much respect was given to the division opponent narrative. I'm glad I hit that. It actually turned into a plus week for me. That's why those parlays are so tricky. You guys will see in a minute. Me and Ted are only one game apart, but he is killing me on the units. Believe Ted is up like over 2 years. I think he's up 12 units or something like that. It's fucking awesome. But so really excited to hit my first parlay, though it did turn into a positive week for me. I'm actually pretty surprised about my last two bets that fell through. The 49ers money line, we sort of gave you guys our narrative about the Dolphins being can crushers, but as it turns out, the 49ers are cans this year. I was just really surprised, man. It got to the point. I watch every 49ers game through and through. It got to the point where I was watching Red Zone during the Niners game. I was like, this is awful. I can't get through it. I think I overestimated the 49ers. I don't even think I underestimated the Dolphins. For those of you that had Jason Sanders going in the semifinals, he had like 22 points or something like that because they were kicking so many field goals. I think if the Niners could have just put together an average game here, they win. They had no rushing attack. Their roster's so depleted at this point. Their left guard ended up getting hurt. Now the entire left side of their line's out for the season. It was a mess. Yeah, so I overestimated the 49ers there and I paid the price for it. The Buccaneers -3.5 was really weird. I did not think that the Cowboys were going to be capable of stuffing Mike Evans the way that they did. That actually cost me a trip to the finals in another league. I didn't think that the Cowboys would be able to move the ball the way that they have. I was actually pretty surprised about that. That Cooper Rush looked fantastic. I don't, whatever the deal is, I think that the Bucks just sent another 3 players to either the IR or out for this week. I think the Bucks have just sustained too many injuries defensively, but also that was probably one of the biggest fails of the year for Baker, I think, because of what was riding on the game and how important it was. I sort of thought he would clutch up. I thought they'd get through it. And I was just really surprised. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of bad luck at the end, right? Rashad White got knocked out and then fumbled the ball. Does Bucky Irving fumble it? I don't know. I don't really want to pretend like I had the right side of that one, though. It just the Cowboys looked like the better team throughout the whole game. So my parlay did hit for $350 or 3.5 units, but I lost, $300 on the bet, but I did get a half a unit ahead. I'm at negative $239 or negative 2.39 units. My record's 44 and 36 on the year. Trying to finish strong, man. So next year we can brag about our nice season-long record. We'll see how this week goes.
All right, and without further ado, let's reveal the Week 17 picks. The dogs are barking for me this week. I've taken a couple big, ugly dogs here. My picks are the Broncos Bengals under 49.5 points. I'm taking the Cowboys +7. I'm taking my second team, the Carolina Panthers, +8.5. Then I'm parlaying the Packers money line and the Lions -3.5. If the parlay of the Packers and Lions hits, that returns $384.76. If the 3 single games hit, that returns $579.26. On a 5-0 week, that would be $964.02. The ticket cost is $400 per usual because I'm doing 1 2 leg parlay. And yeah, we already did the profit loss season record. Just final push, trying to make those numbers nice and juicy for the end of the year.
Okay, and I am doing the very rare, I believe only the second time I have this year, I'm dipping my toe in the 3 leg parlay business. The first leg of that parlay is going to be the Chargers -4.5 against the Patriots. The second leg is, or not the second leg, the second bet that I'm going to take this week is going to be the Bengals -3 versus the Broncos. The second leg of that parlay is going to be the Raiders -1.5 at the Saints. I'm taking the Packers money line along with Ted, but I'm not parlaying it. And then me and Ted are riding together on the last leg of the parlay, the Lions -3.5 at the Niners. Kills me to do it, but I learned my lesson last week and I'm adjusting accordingly. Total parlay return $700. Other return $380.90, basically $381. I'm staking 300 because I'm doing the 3 leg parlay. We'll see how this week goes. We'll probably do a recap for the end of the year for you guys after all of it. Okay. Chargers and Patriots -4.5. 73% of every dollar that's bet has gone on the Chargers. 77% of the numerical bets have also been on the Chargers. That means the public's riding together here pretty hard. Well, the public is going pretty hard on this. I guess technically that is a small money lean toward the Whales, but not enough that it's worth, you know, contemplating. The Patriots are missing 3 starters in their secondary, and that secondary was not very good to begin with. I'm expecting a big day from Herbert and Ladd. And as much as I love Gerard Mayo as a player at this point, I think it's safe to say he's just not a very good NFL head coach. Between the press conferences, between the weird decisions, between him saying he doesn't feel like he has much accountability for what the players do once they're on the field, like he just handles things off the field. Once they're on the field, he doesn't really affect that in his opinion. When you contrast that with Jim Harbaugh and his coaching style and the attitude that his team has and the general vibe from his team, I think there's a pretty big mismatch there. But then on top of man, Herbert and Ladd are going to get a very, very depleted Swiss cheese secondary. J.K. Dobbins is back from his knee injury. At least that's what they're saying. I mean, maybe something changes if he feels weird in pregame warmups, but I don't think so. It sounds like he's going. And Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh absolutely love the running game, and J.K. Dobbins is the only running back worth a single fuck on that team. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like Kamani Vidal a little bit, but he hasn't done much when he's gotten the touches. Like I think he's a fine rotational player, but he's certainly not a starter. J.K. Dobbins, much to the surprise of everyone, it was absolutely balled this year, dude, and it's one of the feel good stories in the NFL. Multiple ACLs and Achilles tear. That's serious to come back and look that good. And the offense was night and day with him in there. And the Chargers are still the second scoring defense in the NFL, even with their 3 to 4 week rough patch. And I know that the narrative has been that their defense has been failing the last few weeks, but I think it's sort of been this conglomeration of things. Without J.K. Dobbins, they weren't converting the easy first downs. They weren't checking down to running backs as all. They're not sustaining drives to the degree that they were. Ladd McConkey's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. He missed a game in the middle here. I think it was more an effect of that. I still think this is a pretty good defense, not on paper, but schematically and with how they operate functionally. And I feel really good about taking them against the Patriots here. Just ultimately, the Patriots are really low ceiling, despite having nice pieces in Stevenson and May, and even Hunter Henry's not a bad player. And I actually like Demario Douglas if he's your wide receiver 2 or 3. They just don't have the pieces there, right? So I feel really good again taking the Chargers against a matchup like that. And yeah, just the bottom line is they're still a middling 3-12 team. They're a middling 3-12 team that has a bunch of 2s and 3s in the NFL running routes out there against 1s, right? If they can't stop the Chargers, if they go down early, I think it gets out of hand pretty quickly. I think the Chargers can kind of do what they want here. I think if the Patriots are able to stuff the run, the Chargers will be able to move the ball. I'm expecting potentially the best game of the season from Ladd this year. He's in all my DFS lineups. I would be betting the overs on any of his prop bets. Yeah, give me the Chargers -4.5 at the Patriots. I think I got really good value here. To me, this should have been maybe even 7.5, 6.5, something like that.
Yeah, as it turns out, I should have started Ladd in my fantasy championship matchup. I started JSN, he only got me 4 points. But fantasy aside, I think this is a really good pick. This was in consideration to make my 5. It was the first one out. I think you have a really good opportunity here in terms of kind of selling the Patriots high. Like that game last week against the Bills, like it was
Yeah.
too close, I think, for too long. And I think the Bills are playing like just sleepwalking almost, right? Sometimes those divisional matchups get a little close. So I think maybe with the public eye on that, the perception of the Patriots might be better than what they are. I love Drake May. I'm a huge Drake May fan. I really love the kid. I think he's got a bright future. I think this Patriots team has a chance to be something here in the coming years, but just with this version of them, with the lack of talent pretty much everywhere on the team except for Drake May and like Christian Gonzalez, Ramondre, right? It just
Yeah.
feels like they're a couple years away in this Chargers team, especially with something to play for, right? Like if they win this game, they're in the playoffs. I would not be shocked to see an, a really good effort here. And this Chargers team, for the most part, this year has done a really good job of not beating themselves. I think that's what good coaching does, right? It keeps you out of your own way. I don't see the Chargers beating themselves here. It's the only chance I would see of the Patriots even coming within the 4.5 margin. So really like that spot.
Okay, Bengals -3 at the Broncos with an over under 49.5. Me and Ted each have action on the game. 41% of the dollars bet on the Bengals has gone against the spread, despite 47% of the total bets going against the spread on the Bengals. 34% of all the money bet has gone on the under. 37% of the numerical bets have gone on the under. So me and Ted are fading the public and fading the big money here. Um, we're in it together. As so what Ted pointed out, I think it was a really sharp call. I think he did a really good job grinding weather reports this week. This is a bad weather spot. It should be cloudy and overcast at kickoff, and then there's a chance of showers, pretty good chance here. AccuWeather is projecting 7 to 20 mile per hour gusts of wind, and both teams have been practicing with wet balls all week. To me, that's a sloppy game, and this is what I mean when I say, damn it, man, I wish I had ground those weather reports a little more like Ted did. I think he really hits it there. 49.5 is a big number. I don't know how it got to 49.5 in the first place. I wouldn't have said it there if it were indoors. He says it. Now, in Ted's opinion, he would have taken the over if it were indoors. To me, like, dude, 49.5 is big. With weather like that, I just don't know. For me, what it comes down to is this, though. We have Bo Nix, Javonte Williams, Old Man Sutton, and Marvin Mims Jr. versus Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Sean Payton is good, but he's not out there running routes for Denver. I understand he has a big coaching advantage, but that coaching advantage can only bridge the gap so much. Now, the question here is, to what degree does that weather nullify the Bengals passing game, right? I do think there's a world in which that happens, but it comes down to the rushing attack if that does happen. And we trust Chase Brown a lot more than the random midwit Broncos backfield. Nobody in the Broncos backfield has even been close to remarkable this year, much less a weekly starter. So, to me, that's going to be my saving grace here in taking the -3. Should I have maybe taken the under instead? I'll let Ted explain why he took it. I think he probably has a little bit better bet than me here. I'm a little bit jealous of it. Um, but all in all, I think unless it is downpours, unless the wind is so bad they can't pass, I expect to see those chunk plays from the Bengals. I expect to see Joe Burrows having an MVP caliber season if his team could win games. I do expect that to shine through here and for ultimately the Bengals to win. I just would feel a lot better about it if the weather report were clear.
Yeah, I think the most important thing here, right, is you got a good number at 3, so you have a push that is live if the Bengals can just win by a field goal, right? Like to me, right when it gets to 3.5, I would play the Broncos or stay away. And that is because I just feel like this weird rain, right, is gonna really hurt the Bengals passing game if it's as bad as they say. We're only as good right now. This projection, my under pick is only as good as the weather forecast. So I mean, meteorologists mess up all the time, right? Like the weatherman is not always right. I love the if this game was in a dome, I would love the over because I think that, like Yanni said, this Bengals passing offense is electric, right? Like the Bengals are putting up points like almost no other team in the league, but their defense is terrible, right? And Bo Nix has shown at points this year he can score. So it's really just a matter of looking at that rainy weather under, right? We just had 2 Thursday night games in a row where there wasn't a single touchdown scored, and like the rain wasn't even that bad in San Francisco and in Chicago. So it's just like I had to do it with the number. Like we've told you so many times on the channel, we think like 40 to 42 to 44 is like a middle of the road total. Anything under 40, that's low. And then once you start getting like 48, 49, 50, that seems like a high total. To me, it feels like this total is just, it's like a dome total to me. It's not taking that weather into account. I'm betting on the weather. I'm like Brick Tamlin out here. That's all it is though. I really feel bad for the Bengals in like a must-win spot, right? You get the worst possible weather for your style of football in your own home stadium, almost like playing against you. Who knows? Maybe Yanni was right. Maybe every NFL team should be in a dome from now on.
Yeah, yeah, they really should.
All right. So this one is me, and it's going to be the first of my really just disgustingly huge underdogs this week. I'm taking the Cowboys +7 against my favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles. The over/under on this game is 38.5 points, so Vegas says low total. There's not going to be very much scoring here. We have 54% of the money on the Cowboys against the spread and 43% of bets on Cowboys against the spread. So when you look at that, right, the overall betting public does not like this pick. The overall betting public, when you see a very good team, right, a 13-3 team or 12-3 team like the Eagles going against like the 7-8 Cowboys, a lot of people want to play that Eagles side, but a lot of big money's riding with me here, taking the Cowboys and the points. The biggest thing here, and we'll start with this, right? Jalen Hurts has been ruled out today with a concussion. And they also mentioned like a finger injury, but really, I think the reason he's probably not playing is he couldn't make it through the concussion protocol. So the Eagles are rolling into this game with a quarterback depth chart of Kenny Pickett, who has hurt ribs and is not good at football. Tanner McKee is going to be the QB2, and he's ass. And then Ian Book is going to be the QB3. They just signed him off the practice squad, and he is mega ass. So it's I can't think of like maybe
Yeah,
I think we're looking at like a Tua to Snoop Huntley level drop off here in terms of like what you got going on behind center for Philly. Then this goes back to the game breakdowns from last week, right? Without Jalen, Saquon rushed for 27 yards on 16 carries against the Washington Redskins, 26th ranked rushing offense, and the offense only scored 9 points in 3 quarters. They couldn't even get into the end zone. So I'm expecting Dallas to crowd the line here, make limiting Saquon an absolute priority. I wouldn't be shocked to see them take a page out of the Mike Tomlin playbook. When Tomlin played the Eagles, they did a really good job on limiting Saquon. I get the Cowboys defense is undersized. They can be run on, but they've been playing really, really good defense lately. They got Yanni last week on that Bucks pick, and I think they're going to dare a banged up Kenny Pickett to beat them. Like, I think they crowd the line, put 8 in the box, and say, "All right, Kenny, throw it deep to AJ Brown." I think that if he was a competent quarterback, the opportunity absolutely would be there, but I am the most anti Kenny Pickett you could possibly be. Um, Next point, no Jalen being in the game means there's going to be no tush push. I think that this tush push play, it's like kind of transcended just the Eagles. We've seen teams all across the league trying to implement their own tush push. We've seen college teams implementing the tush push. We've seen trick play variants based off this tush push. Make no mistake, Jalen Hurts, he may not be the best like drop back pocket passer in the world, but this dude is a power runner, and that tush push from 1 yard out is absolutely automatic. That's going to be off the table for this Philly team. And I think that's a huge deal. This is how they sustain so many of their drives. Nick Sirianni will just go for it on 4th and 1 from wherever on the field because Jalen can just get that yard every single time. That's not going to be available here. And football is a complementary game, right? When your offense can stay on the field, get an extra, I don't know, you convert a tush push, then your drive goes an extra 7 or 8 plays, right? Takes 4 to 5 minutes off the clock. It really adds momentum and helps your defense like stay refreshed on the sidelines, right? they're not gonna they're just not gonna have access to that here. And I think that the Eagles as a whole are gonna struggle. Cooper Rush, Micah Parsons, and the Cowboys have been hot. They've won 4 out of their last 5 games. They've held offenses over that time to 20.8 points per game. They've forced 12 turnovers and they've recorded 22 sacks. So they're averaging over 4 sacks a week, right? They're averaging like about over 2 turnovers a game. This Cowboys defense, I've shit on them at multiple times this year. I've said this Cowboys team is not good at multiple times this year. But what I'm seeing from them over this past 5 weeks, they're playing like a team that actually gives a shit, which is very important for Mike McCarthy. I think they've effectively saved his job. The Sunday night game with the Cowboys in Tampa, that was actually a very fun game for me to watch, just seeing how hard the defenses were out there just crunching guys. This Cowboys team with Micah Parsons back has really been playing motivated. I like them. I love them to kind of give Kenny Pickett and the Eagles hell here. So on Dallas' side, right, CD's out, which is not great. So I think that because CD is not going to be an option, Dallas is going to have to lean on Rico Dowdle and their newly found like commitment to the run. It's not that the Cowboys never ran before, but I think once Dak went out, they kind of leaned more into being a ball control, turnaround, handed off to Rico Dowdle, feature back offense, and that has gone pretty well for them, right? So we have a 38.5 implied team total in this game, which, like I've said, is incredibly low, and we have +7 on the Cowboys. So like Vegas is saying the Cowboys are scoring like hardly scoring at all here. It just feels like too large of a margin and not enough points in a divisional rivalry with your quarterback one and Jalen Hurts out. We have the backdoor cover is live at +7. Like that happens all the time, right? The Cowboys could be losing this game the entire time, be down 13 and get a garbage time drive like in the last 5 minutes of the game to make it a 6 point game, right? Stuff like that happens all of the time. And I think really, like Dallas has a chance to win this game outright, depending on how bad the Eagles look without Jalen Hurts in there. It really is. It takes some balls to make this bet. I think with how the Cowboys season has gone and how good Philly has looked. I get the Eagles have a really good defense, but I think Jalen being out of this game is like going to be absolutely backbreaking for the Eagles in a game that might not even matter for their seeding. So I'm going to take it Dallas +7. What do you think, Yoni?
So yeah, what I was concerned about, I looked at this pick actually, and I thought, God, that number's pretty good, and the defense has played pretty well. I'm concerned that the Cowboys might not hit like 10 points in this game. They don't have CD. They're playing what, in my opinion, is the best defensive team in the NFL. I think they are the best defense in the NFL in a lot of ways, right? I don't know about statistically, but they're close. Rico Dowdle should not be able to find room on the ground. To me, Jalen Hurts is hurt, right? The offense is a little banged up. AJ Brown was on the injury report this week. Saquon missed a half a game this year or recently. But the defense isn't at all. And now they have no CD Lamb. They have Rico Dowdle, who I think will be neutered in this game. And I don't know what you're going to get out of the Cowboys. I don't think they already have an incredible rushing defense as it is the Eagles do, right? So if you can't run the ball, you're going to be putting it on Cooper Rush and Jake Ferguson and oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. That backup receiver there who's pretty
J-
good. The
Jalen
rookie,
Tolbert, Brandon Cooks.
Jalen Tolbert. So you're going to have Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, and Ferguson trying to attack one of the best secondaries in the NFL. I just wanted no part of it for that reason. Like if it's 14-6, this doesn't cover. And I really do wonder if the Cowboys get 10 points this week. You know, if I'm like expecting 6 to 9 points. So to me, I think that's the biggest concern is just, do they even get there? I think Pickett looked okay moving the ball. It looked like he was able to find AJ Brown last week, but the defense played really well and they just gave Baker hell. So like, I think on that side of it, you're probably good, but they only have to get to 14 or 17, in my opinion, to cover it. So it was just a little too risky for me, but I do like the bravery. You're getting a division opponent on the road +7, you know. Can't
Yeah,
hate that.
I'm hoping that they can force like a turnover in like Eagles territory, right? Like I don't know, like a fumble like inside the Eagles 20, get a cheap 3 that way, right? Maybe they get pick 6 or something. We'll
Yeah.
see. I don't usually bet on these big underdogs like this, but the opportunity seemed too good to pass up. We'll see though. You can't when you bet big underdogs like this, like even if they get blown out, you just lose one game, right? Like you don't extra lose. You could just be like,
Yeah.
that was a bad call and move on.
Yeah.
All right, next is the second of my massive underdogs, and I'm riding with my second team, the Carolina Panthers, +8.5, going into Tampa to play the Bucks. The over/under on this game is 47.5. We got 41% of the money on the Panthers against the spread and 49% of bets on the Panthers against the spread. So it's almost 50-50 from the public, but the whales are liking Tampa against the spread a little bit more here. So we'll start with this. The last time these two teams played, right? The Bucks won 26-23, but it was a game that went to overtime. Like the Panthers were absolutely in the contest. Bryce Young led a drive all the way down inside the Bucks 25-yard line. They handed the ball off to Chuba to try and get a couple more yards to the field goal. He fumbles, Bucks go down, get their field goal, right? So to me, I think this is a huge redemption spot for Chuba. I think that Dave Canales is going to know that coming into this game. I wouldn't be shocked to see 25, 30 Chuba carries here, right? The Panthers, even though by all means they're out of it, right? They should be playing for draft positioning. This team really like is taking pride, I think, in putting a good product out on the field, and really they've been extremely watchable since Bryce Young has taken over. And going to Bryce Young, since he took over the job again in week 8 for a starter, He has 1,650 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, along with another 191 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So I think at this point, it's time to say that he looks like a real NFL quarterback. How good of a quarterback he will be long term, I don't know. I think that his size is a limiting factor. I think that there's a lot of things that are limiting factors to Bryce's game, but his mobility in the pocket has looked really good. He's doing a much better job than, say, for example, Caleb Williams of moving in the pocket, looking downfield, and creating plays down the field, which when you're a guy like him at his size, I feel like you need to do, right? And Bryce and the Panthers are going to be going up against the Bucks defense, who's 26th in yards allowed and 31st against the pass. So I really feel like the Panthers are going to be able to score here. This isn't a game I feel like where Bryce Young comes out, looks like absolute trash, and the Bucks go up really big early, right? It feels to me like the Panthers should at least score enough points to put pressure on the Bucks here, in Baker and company. And again, to me, this is strictly a numbers play. I don't think that there's any chance the Panthers just outright beat the Bucks here, but I'm getting +8.5 in a divisional matchup. By all accounts, the Bucks have more to play for, and I think they win this game. But that being said, I like both of the offenses here. The Panthers, we know their defense is banged up and they suck. We know Baker's good. We know Mike Evans is a stud. We know Bucky's great. We know all of that, right? The Bucks are going to score. But I feel like the Panthers probably like at least kind of keep pace with them. I think there should be probably one of the more interesting watches of the week. I like +8.5. It leaves a ton of room for backdoor covers, and I'm on the right side of 7. For all of those reasons, I'm in. I really like the pick. Panthers +8.5. Happy to ride with my second team one last time. What do you think, Yoni?
Well, first of all, offensively, I love this game for like your fantasy assets. I have Mike Evans going in 2 championships this week, and I can't wait. I saw some worry about the weather here, but I don't think, I mean, I saw mixed reports on it. Some people think it's going to be a bad weather game. I'm not so sure. Um, so I think the number's really good. I think there's a very good chance it's a touchdown game and it covers. I really looked at this, right? So I really liked the bet. I was like, oh God, do I do it? Do I not? For me, what I didn't like was Adam Thielen popped up with a hamstring this week. I don't know if he's going or not. Leggett has missed a week or two. He's injured. Chuba Hubbard was questionable all the way up until today, and then they said he's going to roll, but he's at the minimum pretty banged up. I just don't like that the Panthers offense is pretty banged up. But then the Panther or the Buccaneers announced that 4 guys aren't even going this week too. So I think it's going to be a really high flying shootout game. And in that case, I do like the Panthers to at the minimum backdoor cover and lose by 7. Right. So I think the really big number makes this a good bet here. I think there's a pretty good chance this one comes home. And I honestly, if the weather's not bad, I think this is going to be a really fun football game to watch.
Yeah. Still room on the second team bandwagon if you want to drop the Giants and come hang out with me.
Nope, I'm committed. It's going to be Shador Sanders to Malik Neighbors next year. I can't wait.
All right.
Okay. Oh God. All right. Raiders at Saints. Raiders -1.5 at the Saints. I'm taking the Raiders. 61% of every dollar bet's gone on the Raiders. 58% of the numerical bets has gone on the Raiders. So there's a slight lean from the public and the whales on the Raiders here. For the Saints, I think the story of the Saints is pretty straightforward for this one. They have fired their incompetent head coach, who was already one of the worst coaches in the NFL. They are currently down Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, Chris Olave. They are averaging 11.75 points per game over the last month of football. They have been situationally awful. Their locker room has to be awful. The whole franchise is awful. At this point, the offensive talent for New Orleans is like going to the YMCA and picking up 11 guys. We always do this. Would they beat a college team? Would they lose to a college team? Right? I don't know, but they're a lot closer to a college team than they are to an NFL team at this point. And then it gets even worse. The Saints have averaged 220-ish yards per game over the past 2 weeks, and they were the first team to get shut out this year. They simply looked uncompetitive against the Saints in Green Bay. I don't know why that game ever got to a Monday night. Even in the beginning of the year, I'm surprised they penciled in for a Monday night. It's basically that I feel like it's weird, right? Because I feel like I'm selling low on the Saints, right? Like I'm taking them at their absolute lowest point, and I'm still happy to do so. I was actually surprised the game was only at 1.5. The Raiders are terrible. Not defending the Raiders. Antonio Pierce is my favorite coach in the whole NFL to make fun of right now. He's going to get fired. He's going to disappear into the obscurity of failed NFL head coaches like many men have before him. However, in this case, at least Aiden O'Connell seems to be a serviceable backup in the NFL, meaning if you put him in for games, he has the chance to get a 250, 260-yard passing performance. He's had, I believe, at least one, maybe two, 300-yard performances this year. But they have Brock Bowers, they have Jacoby Myers, and there's a reasonable plan and way that you can see the Raiders moving the ball. I don't know how the Saints are going to get offense going. That's really sick, dude. Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, and Chris Olave are their offense. They're all out. And then Taysom Hill, when those guys went out, had actually been stepping in and providing some measure of electric plays. It looks like they didn't even trust Kendry Miller last week to get full run. They have a rotation going at running back. They have Marquez Valdez Scantling and Bub Means out there running routes. Jawan Johnson is currently out there. I think it's a mess, even for the Raiders, even with how bad the Raiders are. I feel like their offense is going to pretty easily be able to get 20, 24, 21 points, something like that. And I don't trust these Saints to get, I think 2 touchdowns is really generous. And again, based on their averages for the last month, that is in fact really generous. I know they've been playing better teams than the Raiders. I don't see anything here. I don't see any life, any signs of life whatsoever. At the bare minimum, the Raiders have had games where their offenses move the ball just fine this year. They've beaten the Ravens this year. Like they played the Chiefs to a tight game. Um, yeah, there's really not a whole lot to say. This is straight up dumpster diving. You're going in the trash. I'm taking, taking an absolute thrown away, half chewed piece of meat, and I'm gonna call it dinner. I'm gonna call it dinner, and I think the Raiders bring it home at a minus 1.5. It does not feel good. I'll be very honest with you guys. It does not feel fantastic.
Oh,
But I do think it comes home.
listen, I think it's very exciting that you're picking the Raiders against the spread one week. You kind of made a very good living this year just fading them against
Yeah.
the spread. I'll say the same. I'll start with this. I think that you're probably right. Like, if you put a gun to my head and you said you have to pick a team here, I'd probably pick the Raiders. I'll just default to the thing that I've said kind of earlier on this year, though. There comes a level of football where when two teams are so bad, you think that anything is a reasonable outcome. And I think
Yeah.
that both of these teams fit the bill. At least the Raiders, right? They have some players. Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers are both good. I like Aiden O'Connell. I think he's fine. I'm starting him in a fantasy consolation bracket championship as my quarterback one, so that's where I'm at. But yeah, it's historically it's a little weird. I know. So thanks to the Favorites podcast and our friend Chad Millman, we have some fun Saint stats for you. Usually, like at least against the spread, teams that get blown out in primetime games the week before, like they cover at a higher rate than normal. And the Raiders will be officially the first team to have a 10-game losing streak, break that losing streak, and then be favored the next week. We've really never seen this level of dog shit in the NFL. It really
Yeah.
is a statistical outlier. I
Yeah.
listen, you might have found value here in a place that too many people were scared to go into. I, for one, was too scared to dive into this dumpster. But good luck, brother. I'm rooting for the Raiders. I think it will be very funny if the Raiders went from like the first overall pick to like 12th over 2 weeks of winning games. Did you see that last week where like the Raiders won and they asked Antonio Pierce about draft position and he goes, ask Tom Telesco to the reporter. Like he knows he's out and he doesn't give a shit about draft positioning. Good spot for
Yeah.
the Raiders to give their best effort. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then is it cool if I take this one? I kind of want you to do the Niners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is going to be the first of our consensus picks this week. This is the first leg of my parlay. I don't believe Yanni has it in a parlay, but we are both taking the Packers money line against the Vikings. The over/under on this game is 48.5 points. We got 44% of the money on the Packers money line and 35% of bets on the Packers money line. So again, we have a situation where we have a ton of the betting public, like the dollars spent in tickets put in are overwhelmingly coming in on the Packers just against the spread. Right now, they're 1.5 point underdogs against the spread. Again, I urge you people out there, I urge you gamblers who want to kind of take it seriously out there, just give away the point, get a little bit of a higher payout. Like how many times will exactly 1 point like bite you in the ass, right? The Vikings win by exactly 1 point. That feels like if you were guessing the exact score of a football game, right? Like I don't think anyone could take you seriously. Like if you're like, I think this game will be exactly 24-23, the Vikings win. Like that's the kind of hedge that you're doing there. I get it. I get it feels good to bet an underdog, but when it's not a key number, just give it away. Take the extra money. Yanni did it. I did it. Do it long term. You'll be happy that you did it. So again, free tendies fantasy, free tendies fantasy consensus. We're fading the stupid public here who's not taking our trick of giving away the point. And we'll start with this. It's time to fade the Vikings. I think I've said for 2 out of the last 3 weeks on this show. I will be looking for opportunities to fade the Vikings. I don't think they're for real. It just wasn't that time yet. This is the time to fade the Vikings. Even though they're an impressive 13-2 on the year, right now they're battling with the Detroit Lions for the number one overall seed in the NFC and the division. Their opponents have a combined record of 73 and 110 out of the teams they've beat. So, and I would say that some of their early season signature wins look less impressive now. Like the Vikings beat the 49ers week 2. That was a huge win for the Vikings to kind of put them on the map as a serious team. Turns out the Niners are cans. They beat the Houston Texans. I think they blew out the Texans. The Texans just got blown out on primetime against the Ravens. They've been struggling down the stretch. The Atlanta Falcons, we know the deal with them and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is cooked. They've literally pulled him out. They're going to eat $100 million ish on his contract. They're rolling out a rookie to try and get into the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks, they've had an up and down year. I would say they're closer to a mid to bad team than a good team, though. And then the Chicago Bears was another one they took to overtime. The Bears have lost 10 straight games. They started out 4-2, and now they're just a joke at this point. So I would say that the Vikings really haven't beaten that many teams other than this Packers squad. Have the Packers finally figured it out? Green Bay ranks 29th in neutral pass rate on the year, and they've leaned into Josh Jacobs in the rushing attack more. Since week 9, Josh Jacobs has 676 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, and is the RB1 in usage in the NFL. I think that the Green Bay was really, really smart to pivot to a run first, run heavy offense with Josh Jacobs. He's one of the best running backs in the league. I think he's a top 5 fantasy guy. The Packers obviously liked what they're seeing with him. They're continuing to do that, right? And when you commit to the rush like Green Bay has, it really helps out your quarterback in Jordan Love. Since week 9, Jordan Love, I love to call him the arsonist, has only thrown 3 interceptions, which is a very low number for like a 7 week or 6 week sample size, right? The best way to keep an arsonist from throwing game losing interceptions is to have him turn around and hand the ball off. And Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers have been more than happy to do that, and they've been effective running the football. The last time these two teams met, the Vikings did win 31-29. I would call that potentially their only impressive win of the year. But a little bit of context, that was Jordan Love's first game back from an MCL injury, and he threw 3 interceptions that basically gift wrapped the game to the Vikings in the first half. I think the Vikings went up 28-0 at halftime. Jordan Love was throwing a lot to like kind of catch up. They brought it close. They came within 2 points, but with the way Green Bay has been just running the skin off the football, right, and playing mistake-free football, or at least mistake-free as you can be with Jordan Love, I don't see a 3-pick game and the Packers just giving the game away to the Vikings here. And let's be serious on the Viking side. It is Sam Darnold at quarterback. He's a feel-good story. I get it. He's had the best year of his career. I get that too. All of that is valid. It's been a great year for Sam. I think he should be probably the comeback player of the year. But make no mistake, this is still the same guy. Like he didn't like just change overnight, right? He's had a long career in the NFL. This is the first reasonably good year he's had. The Packers, they don't have a lockdown defense, but they do have an opportunistic one. They've forced 28 turnovers on the year, which is the third highest total in the league. I'm expecting the Packers to get 1 or 2 mistakes from Sam Darnold. He's prone to making these mistakes sometimes. He's thrown for a lot of touchdowns. I think he has 11 interceptions on the year. Would not be shocked to see 1 or 2 here that might swing the momentum of the game. And we'll finish on this. Brian Flores and the Vikings defense. I love to bully them. I love to bully them, call them just blitz merchants, but they have overperformed on the year, right? They're 16th in yards allowed. They're 30th against the pass and second against the rush, and third in scoring defense with a bunch of no-name guys and zone blitzes, like I've said. In my opinion, right, if you know, I'm just a guy who sits on my couch and watches football, right? I know that Brian Flores zone blitzes at a disgusting rate. I think you can pretty safely bet that an offensive guru like Matt LaFleur will know that too, that the zone blitz is coming. And I would not be shocked to see him scheme like silly little blitz beaters, right? Like Jaden Reed reverse, quick stuff, get the ball out of Jordan Love's hands quickly, get the ball to the outside to kind of get away from the pressure down the middle from the Vikings. Even though he's from the Shanahan coaching tree, I still like the matchup here. Still like the matchup schematically to be able to beat that zone blitz. I know Yanni has kind of been on the Brian Flores has the Shanahan coaching tree beat kind of deal. I don't know how much that's true. I get he's done well against the Shanahan coaching tree this year, beating the Niners and the Texans, but I really like the spot here in a very important game. I know the Vikings are going to be playing to try and keep up with the Lions, right? The Packers, it feels like they're locked into the sixth seed. I don't know how much they'll really be playing for positioning, so to speak, but I think they're going to come out here and want to beat this Vikings team, show they are the better squad here. That's why I'm on Packers money line. Anything that I didn't touch on that brought you to the Packers money line, Yanni?
No, I mean, just a quick note because I just think it's an interesting narrative, right? Um, so there's a thing called an early adopter advantage, right? The people that adopt a advantageous system, scheme, whatever, in anything, in any form of life, you get this period where other people haven't adopted it, and you're at an advantage. I think the Shanahan scheme has been the early adopter advantage for the last 5 to 8 years, where you've seen it kind of running the NFL. I think this year, all of a sudden, when you see the struggles of the Dolphins, of the Rams, of the 49ers, really of the Falcons too. They're a Shanahan scheme. The Saints are a Shanahan scheme. When you see the NFL that sort of caught up to them this year, I think they lost that advantage, and this was when they needed to innovate their way into whatever the next iteration of that system is going to be. We see these things evolve over years. We've seen the Shanahan zone run scheme from the '90s evolve over the years, right? Um, and I think what's really interesting is to me, it looks like LaFleur has done the best job of innovating the run game. That is no longer just the Shanahan zone run scheme at all. He's got really cool things. I'm sure you guys have seen the replays on Sunday nights where he's like pulling two guys, tight ends through the hole, and they're crack blocking a D tackle on like a trap play, but it's like a trap zone run. It's really cool. Dude, Josh Jacobs is very often running for 5 to 8 yards before he gets touched by anyone. I really have a new level of admiration for exactly how good LaFleur has been. You see him mixing those like wide receiver reverses with Reed that don't work with Debo anymore, but they work with Reed because he's innovating new looks for how to get these guys those plays. And so yeah, I mean, do I think Flores has performed really well against the Shanahan scheme? I do. Even on just that list right there, the Falcons, Texans, and Niners are all Shanahan scheme teams that they beat. But I think LaFleur has sort of innovated his way into his own LaFleur offense that is more unique than them. And I think we've seen it all year with how that rushing attack has performed. Okay, Lions at the 49ers. Me and Ted are not thrilled about this, but we are both taking the Lions -3.5 at the 49ers. It's really I take no pleasure in it, man, but I think you have to be smart with how you go about your betting life. And if you bet passionately, if you bet as a fan, if you draft fantasy as a fan, you will lose. It's just the way it goes. There's no, I understand there's a time and a place for that. But to me, when it becomes a financial matter, when it becomes a matter of competitively gambling or playing fantasy, you have to put that aside. And that's what we're both doing here. Much to our chagrin, it is not a great feeling. But look, when you see numbers like this, you'll see why 97% of the dollars bet have gone on the Lions against the spread. 88% of the bettors are going to get on the Lions against the spread. This is giant. To my recollection, that is the biggest lean I've ever seen, especially to have a 9% whale lean when there's an 88% consensus from the bettors already. That is fucking tremendous, dude. And that it shows you just how bad the Niners have been this year. There's absolutely no way these numbers look like that, in another universe where the Niners are healthy and they're rolling. But it is. They have been that bad this year. I think those numbers are accurate. I think 3.5 was way too small of a number. I don't care about getting the wrong side of the hook. And here's why. Since the bye week, the Niners are 2-5 and averaging 17 points per game. They're rolling the RB4 on their depth chart. 3 running backs are on IR. And look, they're playing practice squad players here. And it's not just three running backs. We have Trent Williams and Aaron Banks. The entire left side of their line just got placed in the IR. The better half of their line, by the way, those two guys were really where they do a lot of their run plays off of. We have Ayuk on the IR. They shut down Drake Greenlaw for the year. It is a fucking mess. And in the same sample size during that time, the Lions are 6-1 and averaging 33.5 points per game. They've faced major injury on the defensive side of the ball, but they've been pouring it on offensively. It is not going to matter. Again, make no mistake about it. It does not matter that the Lions defense are banged up. The Niners had one of the worst O lines in the NFL coming into this year, and they've lost two of the best pieces of that O line, one of whom is a Hall of Famer and a bona fide top 3 left tackle in the NFL. Mentally, these teams are in different spots. The 49ers look like they've given up. Yeah, we just had a player quit halfway through the game. They're shutting down key contributors, worrying about next year. And I don't know if you guys saw that interview where Dan Campbell, they asked him about resting starters this week. He goes, absolutely not. We are coming in full force. We are taking this game seriously. If you don't think Dan Campbell's the kind of guy who wants revenge for what happened last year, you're out of your fucking mind. I wouldn't be surprised to see them run up the score to 45 points this week if they can. If they can, I think they will. Remember the Sean Payton game where he got Michael Thomas injured and actually ended Michael Thomas's career? Well, guess who was on Sean Payton's coaching staff for most of his career? Dan Campbell. He is a spiteful, meathead, adrenaline guy. And I actually mean that in the good sense, not in the bad sense like I use it sometime on here. He's an animal, dude. And he has to hate the 49ers for what they did to him. He has to understand the moment. I think this thing is going to get bad. I think it's going to get out of hand really quick. And he's going against a roster who probably just wants the beatings to stop. Like, again, I don't think the Niners are that kind of team when they're at their peak. I think they're all over it. Debo, and on some level, has to know he's not going to be there next year. Brock Purdy, on some level, is negotiating his contract publicly when his agent's putting out things like that the last 2 weeks. Jawan Jennings won't even speak to the media because he's so disgusted with the team. Uh, Kittle's a big oaf. He's always in a good mood, but that, whatever. Isaac Guerrero is going to be going. He's off the hamstring. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball here, man. And this is the first time the free Tendies fantasy has ever picked consensus against the Niners in the history of the show. Yeah, we're fans. We are fans, buddy. But it's sad to say this is a 5-star play. It's in both of our parlays. I felt good enough to 3-leg parlay this. And again, guys, to give you an idea, me and Ted together since 2020 when they went to play the Rams, or 2021
It's
was the Rams
21.
game.
Yeah. Yeah.
2021. Since 2021, when we went to see the Rams game, me and Ted have dropped thousands and thousands of dollars going to a 49ers playoff game every year. We look forward to it every year. It's one of my favorite things to do. My birthday's on January 30th. I always just asked for tickets to the Niners game, right? And then whatever. I would drive like 8 hours to make sure we went to this game. We drove to LA and back to go to this game. We got lost in Inglewood after the LA game while we were trying to hide our 49ers gear, right? It's just that's how good of a pick this is, though, is kind of why I'm saying that. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see one of the worst losses in the Kyle Shanahan era on Monday.
Yeah, my only thing about this game is I don't know why it's only 3.5. I don't know what it makes no sense to me. Either Vegas has a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. I think that's probably it, right? Like, you could say the Lions defense is banged up. Yeah, for sure. That's right. I think the Niners might score a couple points here. I think Brock Purdy would be a nice fantasy start this week, for example. But with how the Niners just got carved up on the ground by Devon Achane and the softest baby shit Miami Dolphins, what is Dan Campbell gonna do with Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah.
I don't know how the Niners get a single stop in this game. It's gonna be brutal. I do think that MCDC is taking the loss from last year in the NFC Championship game really seriously. This is the spot where they pour it on. Hate to say it, boys, but yeah, just take the Lions here. It's not that hard. 97% of the money is on this game. I don't know. If the Lions don't cover this, first of all, I'd be happy, just as a fan. But I think there might be some sort of collusion. At that point, when you're taking a 97% loss as a sports book, it's going to be brutal. But at any rate, that's going to do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. We only got one more gambling episode left for you. Then maybe one or two kind of Mystery Mondays, and that'll be a wrap on the season. Question of the day for the comments. You got one, Yanni?
Where does Shador Sanders play next year? I'm curious, where do you think he ends up? How does that top shake out? Does he hold out? Does he refuse to go somewhere in the interest of going somewhere else? I'm very interested to find out.
I feel like he goes first, which would be to
Well,
the
yeah,
Giants, but I wonder if he would say no to the Giants. I
the
think that's
way that
very possible.
the way that like the Manning family did it and the way that their family has been talking, it sounds to me like he's willing to just flat out say no to somewhere. I know he's discussed being really interested in like the 49ers or the Falcons. Like, but what does that look like? Does he just flat out refuse to sign a contract? I'm really interested. I don't think so. He said he wants to play with Malik Neighbors if it comes down to it. He said he thinks he's going to be a pair with Malik Neighbors. Maybe not. But he's a good enough player, dude, and he's like a big enough name. I wonder. I just wonder, is there going to be a holdout? Where does he end up going? I don't know. Maybe that's kind of lame to end the season, but I because so many of the games this week are going to affect the number one seed. I'm curious if we see some weird throwing of the game.
No.
Uh, yeah.
Okay. All
But
right,
yeah,
and we will catch you next week.
thank you.